Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
What's up? I'm Zakama13, visiting again from the Manticore podcast, and you're listening to Countercharge.
And I'm Ruffinoff.
And I'm Matt Croger. Welcome to a special episode with a special guest with a very quality microphone, giving us some crisp sounds, from a wonderful podcast. We're here today to talk all things life in a TO. Zach had the idea of, that we should come together and have a chat about, what it takes and all things running a tournament. But let's catch up on where everyone's up to. Zach, we may as well start with you. What's happening in your part of the world and Kings of War hobby, mate?
Okay, I want to talk about Countercharge a little bit first. So you guys are thinking about changing the name of the podcast to Reform and Reach-Around?
A little bit of a joke, right? We're not going to change it, but we've been having some fun. For those that have listened, I think wrap around, reform and wrap around, withdraw.
As long as it's not 1 inch rear charge, right?
Yeah.
1 inch rear charge. That's we've been having a lot of fun. Hopefully, everybody else has enjoyed it as well. Probably not. Our stupid level of humor is maybe too lowbrow for some people, but
I was hoping you'd stay as Countercharge, like as a protest. Maybe it comes back in one of the Invasion books later.
100%. Countercharge is going to come back.
Reading the rules, if we were to go for what is the best, replacement order for Countercharge anyway, we'd have to call ourselves Halt.
Sticky Combat.
Yeah. Halt!
Sticky
exclamation
combat.
mark.
Halt actually would be pretty funny, right? It's funny. People don't know, when we started a long time ago, there was a War Machine podcast that came out after us that called themselves Countercharge. Now, they didn't last. They were only around for like 6 months. But it was funny because there were 2 podcasts about wargaming called Countercharge.
Don't ask my opinions on names. You'll only get puns and wordplay. I blame Pokemon. All right. Yeah, hobby. So I've been working on Ash's Marauders a little bit more, getting the desert camo, which I didn't realize would take so much time to do. But I'm trying to make some time to at least finish one of the 2 armies we have for Firefight. And also working a little bit on the Abyssal. Still working on Berserkers, but put a little bit of paint to them. So got a base coat on one of them, just testing things out. That's about where I'm at.
What about you, Robert?
To be fair, we are in the process of adopting another dog. So that is taking some time. But those are just excuses, Matt. I don't have any results here. And I say it to my teamwork all the time. My team, I say, look, we don't do excuses. We do results. I don't have any results to show you guys. You know what? I'm going to say, Matt, it's been so hard with all this 4th edition content, getting it all pulled together, that's taken up all my hobby time.
I think that is your hobby at the moment, isn't it? But this must be one of your longest non-painting stretches, surely.
Yes, that's the best thing I can say. Yeah, I think, I don't know, but maybe we could ask Zach this and you, Matt, the same question. I don't have a lot of motivation, right? Or I didn't have a lot of motivation until we started to see the army lists come out and understand what was going to be in the game. Because I guess if I just wanted to paint like Ogre Warriors or something that I know was going to be in the game, my problem is I have all those. So I was really kind of waiting for, and maybe we can segue into this. I was really waiting to see some of these lists. And Matt, you were already started on Salamanders, right?
Well, yeah, because I think you'd already given up on your hobby challenge goals for the end of year, whereas I'm determined to do all mine and smash you guys.
So here's the thing: I know I'm not going to win, but I know I'm not going to lose. So I'm in a win-win position.
Yeah. So I still had a motivator because I've only got 1 goal left to tick for the year, and then it'll be the first year I've reached completion. That was my motivator, and I knew Salamanders were going to be in the Evasion book. But I tell you what, Rob, after having a look, I really appreciate, having been between editions, army list builders more than I used to. We've been blessed for a long time, both with Easy Army and then the Companion. But like having to go back and go to a page and be like, or, what you've written down or a spreadsheet or build out a spreadsheet. These Horde of Ceremonial Guard I've been painting, when I've been doing a bit of Salamander list bashing, I think they'll only be able to see the table if it's 2,300 points or above, because expensive Hordes are going to be a bit hard to get in.
Are you going to take them as a Horde, not as a regiment?
I think I've got already a Horde base done, so that's mostly what's driving me at the moment, but I'll have a look.
Defense 5 phalanx units are going to be so tasty.
Oh, I know, but I want a Horde. I want a bigger
but
one.
I'm saying
Nerve 25.
Yeah, that's true. And it went up, right? It's actually more than before. Wasn't it 23 before?
Sorry, it's 24 now, and then if you take a rallying option, 25. Yeah. So anyway, I'll see. I'll see because I had a bunch of Salamander bases done from when I was last working on them. So I'll see what's in the cupboard. I might actually have 2 regiments. We'll see. But so that concludes where we're at the hobby. Actually, the other thing I did is I've finished all my epic printing for the Plague that came with the plastic. Actually, I was gonna have them ready to show you, but I forgot to. They're still draining, ready to cure.
Don't you have like a wash station and an automatic curing station and stuff?
Yeah, but and I bought a big one that did it all in one. I didn't realize how big it was when I got it off, one of those sites where places that go bust sell all their things. It was too huge, so when it got an issue with it, I just chucked it out and went back to my old small one. So yeah, stuff's got to drain before I cure it.
War Games USA had a Lord of Lies I had my eyes on for a long time. It said one left in stock, and it was $45. I'm like, oh, that's such a good
That's like
deal.
half price or something.
That's like
really
half
good.
price. I'm like, oh, that's such a good deal. And I finally get some birthday money, and somebody's bought it out from under me. It's sad.
No.
Someday. I'm definitely not ready to put him in my army anyways, but yeah.
The Lord of Lies is going to be pretty awesome, though, because he shuts down commands.
Oh, does he?
I mean, he was doing that kind of stuff before, shutting down auras, right? But I think he's definitely a counter meta kind of thing, right?
I think shutting down the commands is better than the auras that it was. Yeah.
100%.
I've got that painted up. I certainly didn't do the model justice, sadly. Are you much of a hobby guy, Zach? Like, we know that the Mantic Lore podcast is obviously around the lore, but do you enjoy a lot of hobbying?
So, I mean, as far as painting and stuff goes, I am not very good at it and don't get a lot of time. I got 2 little kids at home, so it's kind of hard to get paints out and get things set up, and then also, have to take care of them, make sure they're not spreading the pots of paint everywhere, or getting into little plastic pieces and choking on them. And as far as finding time for hobby, try to do it at night. So lighting is not great, but do try to make time for it here and there. I wouldn't say I'm good at it. I just got my wife also into Kings of War, and she's doing Northern Alliance. And I'll tell you what, she's already better at painting than I am. She's amazing. She's basically doing non-metallic metal ice already. I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine.
That's a little depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it might work out if you can convince her to paint your army as well.
Yeah, she might be painting Ash's Ogres. We'll see. She got into it. She's like, okay, I want these paintbrushes done. Okay, I want these goggles, like the zoom in with the light. I'm like, yeah, you got it. I'm like, let's go. So that's been fun.
That'd be amazing if my wife was like, hey, to be fair, a long time ago when we were much younger, she did paint armies with me and stuff, but that ship sailed 20 years ago. So
I've said it before. She looks up from painting every once in a while and curses me. It's like, why did you do this to me? I love it. Why?
Yeah, Rob, actually, I got my Redgrass light came finally.
Oh, that's nice.
It's actually super bright.
Is it rechargeable? Really, so you as a battery, or
so it plugs in, but then it's completely maneuverable, and they have one that is 2 of those. So that's made a difference in the hobby space, which is nice. All right, okay. So Rob, what about local community? Let's roll into that. What's going on locally?
It's been pretty dead here. Basically, everybody is just waiting for 4th edition. I in our local Discord for the shop, basically the people are posting, hey, I'm not playing until 4th comes out. So we're not too far away, but yeah, it's been pretty dead. And, a good indicator how dead it was, we had our last Southeast event of the year, and I think they only had 14 players, and I didn't go either. So shame on me, right? But it was like maybe half of what we usually have for turnout. So fingers crossed, we're really close to 4th, and we get this explosion of participation.
What's your vibe locally, 4th, Rob? I know you said everyone's waiting, but
it's positive. Yeah, everybody's ready. Everybody's, they've been listening to the stuff, and it's funny. We talk. It's like, I mean, if I'm in a group or something, I'm trying not to tell. I don't want to spill the beans, and one way or the other. I don't know about you. Like, if they don't ask, I really want people to find out on their. I mean, I love that moment where you get to see the book for the first time and it's unspoiled. You're like, oh my gosh, this is in there, and so I want everybody to have that opportunity. So no, it's been completely dead to the point where I am ready for a jump start, a massive, electrical shock to our heart, and a little. So it's coming though. We're not far away. I mean, maybe a month, and we'll be all playing Kings of War 4th edition.
What about you, Zach?
So for our local community, I said last time, like, we don't have much of a community here, but since I was on last time, Johnny Walk in Idaho reached out. I talked with Adam Ballard. Tyler Schultz reached out, and they're like, hey, we've got this event coming up. Hey, we got this event. You should come out. Like, I would love to, but just time and money and necessities. I'm trying to get into grad school. It just didn't line up, and so I wasn't able to make it out. But thank you guys so much for the invites. I did pre-order the books and the map. I saw that map, and I thought, oh, yeah, okay, I'm doing that. So that's going to come eventually. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, nice. And for us here locally, I think we've got one small event this weekend. Yeah, I unfortunately cannot attend because there were clashing priorities in the house. Our registrations for Clash by this time of year, because it occurs in late January, are lower than they usually are. But I think that is mostly because people aren't quite sure what they'd be able to bring, so just haven't committed to it. But also there's about 5 regulars that all got pregnant within a 3-month, window, and they're all having babies like in the 2 or 3 months before Clash. So I think there's a bunch, and that includes, 2/3 of the Direct Misfire crew. Yeah, that's so right. There's a bunch that'll have new families and things that, won't be able to attend, which is, totally reasonable, but it'll just probably knock our numbers again. But I'll be really interested to see if we pick up some new names because of 4th. Which might not be this year, but next. Ronnie's trying really hard to get out for this year, but we'll see. All right, so with that, why don't we take a quick break and then we'll come back with our main topic.
This is Marcelo Rucco, the most international Kings of War player, and you're listening to Counter Charge.
And welcome back. So, Zach, this is where you get to take the reins, and you get to be the boss. If Rob's talking too much, shut him down. You're used to being the boss though on your own podcast, I guess. So, you get to take over and let's talk all things in the all things a day in the life of a TO.
Yeah, so the first time around came on and we talked about events and tournaments coming in as a player, having never really experienced war game tournaments and stuff like that. And kind of understanding that more, making it more accessible, trying to break down those gates. So this time I wanted to talk more about what's it like running an event and things like that. So yeah, tell me about a day in the life of a TO. So it's event day. What are you doing from start of day to end of tournament?
You're running. That's the whole day. You're just on the move. But Matt, I don't know about you. Actually, the best part is when the day's here. The really heavy lifting is sort of over, and now you just have to kind of, push it across the finish line. But yeah, it's. I would tell you the day, like if it's a 2-day event on a Saturday, it starts. Friday night, I'm making sure I get a good night's sleep because I know, and I'm going to be wearing some sensible shoes because I know I'm going to be walking and talking and scoring and paint judging and whatever else. I'm setting up tables. I mean, once it gets rolling, and I should say, Matt, it's not that I'm at the tables like answering questions. It's more just the behind the scenes stuff, like making sure if people have questions about the score sheets or the software we use. Very little do I actually have to answer questions about what rule, that kind of thing. It's mostly just, administrative stuff. Oh, where's lunch? Is the caterer here yet? That kind of thing.
I think you're right. Like there's that bit of the start of the day stress. I mean, so generally at the start of the day, you're trying to be there probably a good half hour before, if there might be a check-in time, you're probably there at least half an hour before. So you're ready to start checking names off. that's probably one of the harder things at the start of the day is, making sure everyone comes to you so you know that they're, particularly with the bigger tournaments. Once you've done a big tournament, if you're like a 12 to 20 man tournament, you'd agree with this, Rob. It's almost like, you could literally, do it with one hand behind your back if you're used to a bigger tournament, depending on, the amount of complexity you've added with, hobby or whatever. But yeah, generally, you're starting pretty early before everyone else, checking everyone else in, and then making sure everyone's getting whatever you want to have them for the day. But it's the great thing about Kings is there'd be much more difficult game systems to run tournaments for. Like Rob said, the questions about the game are the minority. It's more the organisation, and like every time there's a group of people together, you have a variety of personalities to manage, from people who are anti-tech, where you've tried to go all tech and no paper, or gamers are classic for just not reading or doing something themselves. It's, they love a good spoon feed.
Yeah.
So, or not listening when you yell out where everything got to be. So it's mostly organizational, I would say. You get to the end of the day, and just from the little things you're keeping in your head, it depends how well you plan. But I think you feel as tired as if you've played 3 or 4 games, wouldn't you say, Rob?
100%.
Mm.
It's funny, though, when you think about it, the idea of an iceberg, like the actual running the event is that is what you can see above the surface of the water, like maybe 20%. It's that 80% below the water line of all the work that comes before the event. And then right after the event closes, and you've got to like pick up terrain and get the scores posted and all the stuff to kind of close it out, sending out surveys to get information on what people think for next year. It's a job I would never quit. It's just so much fun. I mean, I don't know about you, Matt. I'm always a fan of parties, especially when I can host the party. So I sort of vicariously live or get enjoyment from the enjoyment that people get from coming to these events.
Yeah, I don't think you'd run an event if you didn't like putting it on for other people, right? Whether it ends up costing you money or not, or, it's really, I've always seen it as basically what you can, as something you can give to the community. It is a gift to the community, not unlike doing a podcast. Yeah, so you'd know that feeling, Zach. It's something that you do. So I think when people haven't run an event, they are largely unaware of how much effort it takes to run a slick, low issue event, where everything's coordinated, and the bigger the event is, the more that, the more that involves.
It's a good point too. I mean, anybody that's thinking about running it, don't jump in the deep end, right? People say, "Oh, I only had 6 players." For your first event, that's perfectly fine, right? Because it's simpler. I bet at 6 players, the companion won't crap the bed, right? So. Or maybe it will. I mean, maybe we can talk about that, Matt.
Yeah,
I have yet to really use Companion for a 2-day event. I've used it a few times where I didn't have any soft scores, like just as a 1-day. But I mean, that is also, if you're not using Companion, whatever that is, if it's a spreadsheet or some bespoke Google Sheet or some bespoke software package, you've got to like learn the software, and you've got to get it all set up and make sure that it's, run it through its paces. So are you using Companion?
Yeah. So I would say from a running perspective, Rob, look at him. He knows he's just thrown a hand grenade, and he's waiting for me to, he's waiting for me to explode. The last 3 years, the only procedural issue I've had has been Companion with running the events. And so that's a constant anxiety. But that would be an anxiety with no matter what software I was using, is going in and like, what happens if this piece of software, or, even if it is a spreadsheet, what happens if it doesn't do what I want, right? Because there's no really good way without spending a lot of random time to test for those scenarios. So you do go into some of these things in an act of good faith. And so, but that's one of the reasons that we have now been working on building our own. So hopefully it will be a little bit more predictable to handle the tournaments, and that we don't have to, have that anxiety going in on will it work or not. But, it's still tech. Stuff happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would say on the day, actually, it's always the tech that's going to be the biggest anxiety.
Weakest link.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Nice. So, because I'm a lore junkie, what kind of memorable or difficult calls have you had as TOs? And TO, I don't think we said it explicitly. TO is tournament official?
Tournament organizer.
Organizer. Okay.
We're having this discussion on our Facebook page now, right? Acronyms and shorthand, and hey, tournament official sounds pretty awesome as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's probably a bit more applicable if there's more.
You might be able to, Matt. You might be able to wear a badge at home and get some, get somewhere with your wife, and she go, "You're an official? I didn't. Yeah. You're official."
Our new Saturday night outfit.
Yeah, they love a man in uniform, right?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a cap, actually.
This is no, ma'am. I'm an official. I'm an official.
Yeah. Yes. A cap would get in the way less,
Yeah, there you go.
If you do have to go to the table, it's usually going to be, hey, this is really close. Is it a flank or a front? Right, that kind of thing. Or can I see the target? Now, that being said, Matt, I love it when know-it-alls think they know the rules, because it does happen every once in a while. We're like, I know the rule. No, you don't know the rule. And you get over there, and then they think you're going to basically rule in their favor. And you're like, no, you big Nimrod. That's not the way this works. I've been doing this for 10 years. It's probably come up twice. You know, the one, Matt, where somebody thinks they're outsmarting everybody by taking 2 units and deliberately making it so that they can't charge either one of them. That's where I walk over and go, actually, it's in the rules. You can't do that. So we're going to move this here, and they're going to charge that. So that's those are funny, because I think it's like they've sort of outsmarted themselves, because, Kings of War is it's a well-written game. It's clean. It's pretty concise. But I think there are sometimes where you just have to go, yeah, logically, this doesn't make sense. And Kings of War tries to follow some sort of logic. If it makes sense, it's probably in the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of the time, people will ask over just for clarity. So if it's at all roughly, or like if there's a hint of ambiguity, they'll just come over for certainty of the call, because there are people who take their gaming very seriously, at tournaments, and that's okay, as long as it's played within the laws. It's funny, I say, there's one big anxiety on the days, but then every question you ask will probably make me think of another one that I block out between years or events. But it's always, I don't think I've ever made a wrong call, maybe 1 or 2, but it can be uncomfortable, because you are making a decision that potentially affects someone's enjoyment of that game. But that's where, like Rob said, the fact that Kings is a really clean game and pretty much everything is accounted for in the rules or subsequent FAQ, that you do have stuff to heavily lean on. But you just know that you're making calls, like particularly if it's like right on the line, it's still a game of potential millimeters that, can cost someone the game, and if the players haven't been that good at, stating intention and talking it through first, then, these things sometimes feel like a surprise to someone. So if you're going to run an event, you still have to be pretty confident and comfortable in your knowledge of the rule set. That is one thing I would say, that or your ability to find the answer quickly.
Yeah, I see that. So it sounds like you guys have been pretty fortunate. You might not have had to ever kick somebody out of a tournament or disqualify somebody. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, this is a 40K. They don't cheat, or at least not very often. So, I kid. I'm sure every community has to, some portion of the community has this problem crop up every so often. But no, I have not had the misfortune to have to kick people out. I just think, it's funny when people, so the cheating aside, like if people just are kind of abusive or just really irritating to the people, it's interesting. I get the impression that they're usually self-aware enough to realize that this wasn't the event for them. And then they don't come back. They'll finish the weekend, but they go, oh, you know what? I'm really not the right personality for this event. Maybe they're a hardcore tournament player that's, going to bring, 9 regiments of Wranglers, and just shoot them off the table. and maybe this is more of a hobby focused thing. Also, your scoring system will have influence on who comes, but even when they come, they're going to go, oh, this isn't really my type of tournament, and they'll probably not come back if it's not really what they're looking for. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is you run the event you'd want to participate in, and typically over time you get people that are like you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I've definitely never had to kick anyone else. You know, I've never had a question about loaded dice or had to get someone to use house dice or anything just because there's questions. I believe in the main the community does a reasonably good job of policing itself. And like I'm a believer in there's some kinds of gatekeeping that are healthy gatekeeping, you know, and those types of players don't tend to, you know, play Kings of War, or they don't last for very long because it's not a community. And then like even within Australia broadly, you know, which it is across the world, not necessarily, but like in Australian culture, there couldn't be much lower than, you know, cheating. So like those kind of people, if they're caught out, aren't going to last long.
Instead of gatekeeping, it's more about that we encourage a certain type of behavior. A good tournament models the behavior they want. And I think over time, people conform to that.
Yeah. And I think it speaks really well of the community. Like from what I've observed in, you know, the almost 2 years that I've been in communication with the Mantic community, it seems like very mature, respectful gaming, which is another attraction for the community. So I really enjoyed that.
Part of that, though, is a response to where some of these people came from.
Exactly.
And so they might have been in other communities where maybe they didn't get what they were looking for, and they are, come hell or high water, they are going to make sure that, number one, they're getting the environment they want, and they're going to make it a pleasant environment for everybody, you know, welcoming environment for everybody else. They've tournamented on the rough streets.
Right. They've broken out of the toxic, dangerous neighborhood, and they found a nice place to live.
I mean, if anything, we're like toxic positivity is what I've been told.
Yeah.
So we're the opposite.
I think it is also the function of the rule set, though. Like Rob, you frequently say there's a game for everybody, right? And I think the less combative players tend to drift towards a game like Kings, where it's all about the depth of tactics rather than the list building gotcha moments, right? Some people enjoy that, building a list to surprise someone that they didn't know what was coming, or be able to make use of a rule. And I don't think the people that really enjoy that are playing Kings. Not that there's anything wrong with those people, but I think it generally makes for a more pleasant gaming experience.
So when you're coming up with a tournament, you're creating this event, what kind of things do you put in a tournament packet?
Before you even create the tournament packet is just what kind of event are you going to run? And those decisions will eventually distill down to the type of scoring system you have. Do you include soft scores like painting and sportsmanship? Do you not? Are those things capped? So you've got some questions to answer, but if you've answered those questions and you have you want to do an event pack or a tournament pack, this is the document that will tell all prospective players this is what the event's about, and should essentially answer every question. So you obviously have to give them all the pertinent information, like when is it, where is it, right? You need to talk about where do they register, how much is it going to cost, army composition in terms of, you know, do you have any special rules, what lists are allowed, when do you have the cutoff date for changes, right, to either lists or even the rules themselves. Do you want them to send you PDFs, or do you know, how do you deliver the list? You know, I will say Companion is still really great at that. Like if you just want to use it for that, that's wonderful. They can generate the list and then they can just email you the PDF. In terms of army composition, like do you have special, you know, like Dead of Winter, I think had at one time, like you could only take 3 of a certain size unit, even if it was core, right? It was just, you know, a way to tweak the game a little bit. Also in army composition, if you have special characters that you're giving out at the event, those go there as well. Then lay out your appearance. You know, do you require painted models? Will you accept proxies? Will you accept counted as models? There's a lot of those kind of questions, because those are questions that people that might think about coming to the event, it's less confrontational. You know, I think they find it easier. They don't have to email you. They can just look, and you've already told them. Terrain. What kind of terrain is going to be on the table? What heights are we using? Scenarios. Are you going to give them up front? Like I don't give the scenarios up front. I just say, we're going to pick 5 random scenarios from these books and then leave it at that. And then, obviously you got to give them the schedule. When do they need to show up? When do they need to have lunch? And then I think the biggest part is scoring. So how do you win a game, right? Do you have some contribution? Is it heavily scenario-based scoring? Is there a piece of it that's based on attrition or kill points, right? Is there like secondary or tertiary missions that you're giving them in addition? Hobby scoring. If you're going to hobby score, like, how are you going to judge them? Is it like a very objective, professional thing where you're, maybe you have like a checklist, or is it more that artsy, subjective thing where, it's art, it's good if it's in the eye of the beholder kind of thing. But you got to get all the specifics out. Sportsmanship. How are you going to score both the player's behavior at the table, right? And, usually there's some kind of sportsmanship score that's related to overall, did you give your opponent a fun and enjoyable game? And, that's open for interpretation. How do you define that? What awards you're going to give out? So I rambled there a little bit, Matt. So maybe pick up on some of that. I mean, those
are all great.
It's the most important document you could write. This is the most important thing. And I will say this. This is my one funny thing, is that I started the Blue Sea Brawl a million years ago with this sort of format, and I've continued it on into Kings of Memphis. And I love the fact there are other events that said, Rob, can you send me your, the doc file, right? Or the Google Docs file. And so there are many events that run the exact same format. Their tournament pack. There's many events that have the same format for their tournament pack. I mean, literally it's the same event, and they just change the name and maybe adjust, how they want to score it differently. But I love that. It's the influence that keeps on giving, year after year. So if you don't like some of these events around here, then it's my fault.
Yeah. and I think it's the reason that that's important is because, as I alluded to before, you've got a couple of groups of people that attend tournaments. You've got people who are coming because it's the only time when there's an event. It's just more practical to play in an event once every month or two rather than it is to do regular, say, gaming night. So they come to it to get 3 to 5 games in or something like that, depending on whether it's a day or 2 or 3 to 6 or whatever. And then that's their opportunity to hobby for the next little while in terms of gaming. But then you've got the people that, really want to win. And so the reason you need that clarity in that tournament pack is because people may change what they do, things like bring to your tournament, because they do want to win. And like, let's be honest, even the people who are going to play several games, do enjoy winning a game. So they don't want to be caught out by something. So that's the reason for having that clarity. And that's why it's so important. And I think then the main thing with that tournament pack then too is particularly the bigger the event, probably the more important, because you will get more collections of people who are interested in being specific for the event, is make sure you've got it out at least a couple of months, probably ideally 3 months early. Doesn't mean you can't make changes to it, but you want a lot of that stuff nailed down early so people have an expectation of what to bring. That's been a problem for us with Clash this year with dropping 4th edition, is that I've had to make changes, but in the first pack I declared it. I went, this is basically the pack from last year, but these are the bits that are potentially open to change. And we've actually taken the step of dropping the points level from 23 to 2,000, although I'm kind of regretting it now. I've seen most, because I thought, well, it's better to give people more time to get to grip with new rules, and they get more time by playing fewer points. So we'll just see how that goes. But yeah, getting your pack out early, I think is really important. I think what Rob said, most of that stuff that's the nitty gritty detail of what you want, and then you've got the optional things if you're a bigger tournament, like the Masters with Jeremy and his crew did this year, or Steve always does. Of do you then go the extra mile and tell people about what are their travel and accommodation options and what's around and things like that. I would say in terms of the pack, one of the biggest issues I have, Rob, I don't know about you, is distribution, particularly when you make changes, because, you've got people on Facebook, then you've got some people who don't like using Facebook. Hopefully you use some sort of system to gather in tickets and monies that at least gives you their email addresses so that you've got that as an option as well. I would say that's probably the thing that you should always do. I mean, I'm not sure how taxes and things work in America, but I always outsource tickets to Eventbrite. It barely costs anything, like it's a little, and you just pass the fees on. There's a little fee. So it manages the tickets, but then it gathers the information you need to actually contact people.
Yeah, I post it in a variety of places so people see it, but as they're signing up, and I have the list from last year, right? I have the list of all the email addresses. And then when, we're getting closer to the event, maybe a month out, I'll just say, hey guys, here's an update, give you some updates on what's going on. How's the traffic in the area? And by the way, here's a copy of the pack. Now, what I've been doing the last couple of years, I have a very special clientele at our event. So I actually have a player pack, and so they get a hard copy of the both like the tournament pack, but then also like the scenarios and the score sheets. Matt, it's been funny. I've done all of the different scoring systems where it was fully digital to fully paper, and I've sort of reverted back to, you know what? Paper doesn't ever fail, right? Like you write down an answer, it doesn't.
Paper doesn't lose connection.
I totally agree. I try and go the non-paper route, so I just don't have to print, particularly at Clash, right? Or like your Kings of Memphis or whatever, Rob. Like I don't like printing 64 player packs. I mean, mostly because of the amount of paper. It's not really about the amount of time. But if you're prepared to do that, it's definitely a more fail-safe option.
Yeah, the last couple of years, I've just went to like a Kinko's and had them print them. It's like $40 or whatever. Here they are, and then I'll have to mess with it.
Is that a printing shop, not a sex shop or something? Is it Kinko's?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You don't have Kinko's FedEx? Well, wait. No. If you change one letter in that, it's a different kind of shop.
Yeah. We
go to Kinko's and say, I need to get this pack out early. Can you help me?
Exactly. Yeah. And don't skimp on the length.
And now we're into After Dark.
Yeah. We've got really original names for those places here, Rob, like Office Works.
We've got some similar places here too.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about getting the word out. That was one of my other questions. So what are some things you would recommend against or avoid putting in the content of the pack, if anything?
The only thing is, if you have anything, I'll say it like this: if you have anything, there's a potential for something to change. Mm-hmm. And you think you still have to have that in the pack, make sure that you
future-proof
are very clear that this is subject to change. Because what will make people angry is last minute you're like, oh, we're gonna let this army in. Oh, they just updated an FAQ and we're going to accept it, even though we had a date. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're not locked in on any of this stuff, then make sure you make that clear. But my recommendation is don't do any of that. Set everything in stone, and it's in stone, and we move forward, right? Yeah. Set a reasonable cutoff date for rules changes, and I also don't ask for the list like super early.
Well, I think list submission, Rob, we still do it, but it really came from Warhammer, where you used to have comp packs, right?
And also, like, you had somebody that's to check it. Yeah, it's so complicated. But now you have Companion. If you're using Companion and you're following basic rules, it fixes itself.
It's more for if you want to put lists out and things like that, because people like doing that. So, I typically only have it about a week before the event or a few days even, and then you can just release them all at once because you don't need to be checking them anymore. Like Rob said, is set a date. So when we're not between edition changes, we've always struggled with the fact that the Clash of Kings book would come out, and Mantic being Mantic, you could never. Oh
no, Twilight King is no longer in the book.
Yeah, but you could also never rely on what the actual release date would be. So it would always basically be, if it's out before December 1, we'll be using it, and that's including FAQ and things like that. So be firm on the date. I think the other thing is what's always frustrating from a point of view of a TO is you are going to put a lot of work or effort into your pack, right? And probably 20% of the people are going to read it properly.
And no one's going to read it.
Yeah.
And have extras because they're going to lose them as well.
And then you'll get the questions.
Don't make the print too fine.
Yeah, you get questions about what about this? And you're like, have you read the pack? To be fair, you'll miss stuff.
Matt, I almost want to give like -5 turnip points if I have to give you a new pack.
Yeah.
Ignorance point deduction.
So at the same time, for the people that will read it, or if you're going to be directing people back to read it, you also want to make sure that you're structuring it in a way that it's not just blocks of text, that it is simple to read. You know, you're going to have people of different literacy levels and things like that. So, you know, trying to generally, and lots of things now, I mean, to be honest, I probably haven't done this with the Clash Pack, but when we put out, you know, health literature, there are things like Microsoft Word or whatever now give you a readability score and give you suggestions. So that's not a bad idea before you convert it, because, you know, we've got a wide range of human beings that play Kings of War, right? Or play any board game. So making sure that the readability is easy is always a good thing.
And if you want it to look pretty, there's two people in our Kings of War community that I would emulate. One is, I believe Selleck is the one that does most of the direct misfire stuff, and Paul Welsh, part of the Northern Kings group. Those guys are artists, man. Mine is like a crappy Google Doc, but theirs is like, oh, it's like a professional pamphlet.
Yeah, Steve's is pretty good these days too.
Oh, okay, but I look at something from Matt Selleck and I'm like, is this a cruise to Australia? Where am I going here? What am I buying? Is this a timeshare?
No, I know. So he's I think had to learn a lot because his partner's in the digital world, in like media. So he's learned a lot, and he's a very pretty. I wish I had his talent. My latest pack is a template I got set up on Canva for me. I paid someone on Fiverr. You know, and then I just reuse it at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I think that the pretty look is an optional. You know, people like it. Do they appreciate it? Probably not. I think what's more important is that you've got a clear structure like Rob's, and that people can follow it through easily.
Okay. Tell me about some of the tools, either digital or analog, that help make running events easier, from scoring to matchmaking. Shout out some of the programs you use. I know you said like people use straight up Excel.
So for scoring, you're really talking about capturing the scores, but then also setting the Swiss match. So we typically, Matt, right? We're all running Swiss scoring, right? So you want something to help you make the matchups, and you want something that will verify you haven't played that person again, or maybe you have immunity from other people in their local area for a little while.
Okay.
Or maybe you want to, I don't know. There's a number of reasons. Maybe you don't want to play on the same table back to back, right? So those software packages make it much easier. You literally put the score in and hit the button, and it goes, oh, here are the matchups. And then you go, okay. And you might tweak them if you see something. But yeah, in terms of what you could, I mean, honestly, if you're comfortable with just one of the basic scoring systems, Matt, Companion does Blackjack, Northern Kings, and then Out of the Book.
Yeah, I think they've put the name of Blackjack, because he did some updates and the name came out, which made it confusing. So I'm not sure if it's listed as Blackjack or things anymore, but all that's going to change too.
They have to update it because all the new scenarios and stuff.
It's going to really depend on your scoring system. But if you're playing it as however the book writes it, you know, Companion, and particularly for a small event, Companion does a reasonable job. If you're looking for what is currently probably a spreadsheet version that's probably the gold standard, you reach out to Mike Adkins of Dash 28. He's produced a really slick series of interconnecting spreadsheets, but it will require some setup, but he's got how to do it, which is amazing. And then hopefully by the time Clash rolls around, hopefully we'll have finalized building something. But then there's other ones that are pretty low barrier to entry, like Best Coast Pairings is a pretty good online piece of software. That's probably the other big one. Have you got any others?
There's Longshanks. There's a bunch. Like if you just do a search for tournament scoring software, you'll find them. And really, it just depends on how much you want to score. If you just want to score the gaming score or what's happening on the table in that, and for matchups, and then if you have soft scores, you want to do that separately, like in a spreadsheet, that's also an option. Because man, I don't know that, like, I know for sure Companion won't run my scoring system, so we have a spreadsheet for it.
No, ours will though, Rob. We've been doing design with you in mind, my friend.
Oh, nice.
And then some of the other things are whatever you would use to personally organize yourself, right? So whether that's pen and paper, but for me, it's some sort of online program. So for a while, it was Trello. We had when we were trying to get other people to run events locally, we had a common Asana board that we could give to people to say, this is what we do for events. Now I'm using something else for personal organization that crosses work and personal. So just have your checklists because to be honest, you just can't keep everything in your head on top of normal life. So
at the very least, like a Google Drive or an Outlook 360 or some sort of cloud thing where you can just, here's all the stuff from this year. And that's what I do. All right, 2025 is over. 25, I make a folder and it goes in there. And now I start the 2026 folder, right? And to be fair, it gets a lot easier the more years you run it. I think, what was this last one? Was this, so we're going into, we run it this year, next year, it'll be the 6th one. So I've already run 5. So like at this point, like all I'm doing is taking the pack. But now you said that, Matt, I need to think about getting somebody on Fiverr to get me a new template because I think that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah, you could get something really nice.
Musical sheets or something with notes and stuff to play into the rock and roll theme. Maybe like a Gibson guitar. I don't know. Now you got me thinking, Matt.
And so if you're going to do something like that, you just make sure that you pick someone that's going to give you ownership over the file and not as a PDF because then you need like Adobe Pro or something, whatever their Photoshop or something to edit it properly.
Illustrator, probably.
Illustrator, yeah. So typically, like my preference these days, because you can get free versions of Canva, is to get someone who's going to give you a Canva link ownership over the file so that you can at least do some levels of editing afterwards if you needed to without going back to them. Or if you're using Fiverr, making sure that there's someone that gives you a certain amount of edits before that they're done with it, because they're the things that could catch you out potentially.
Same thing with logos. If you're a big enough event, you feel like you want a logo for the event, make sure you have the Illustrator files or,
And with logos and things, like I know AI is a controversial topic in gaming, right? Like it could do it for you, but it can be quite difficult to like negotiate detail with AI. Yeah. So, I've found it particularly difficult to get a nuanced approach with AI. So I will still typically use someone on Fiverr or something because I can say to them, this is specifically what I don't like. Don't change anything else, and just change this.
What do you look for in a venue?
Well, I'll start because I have the easy answer, which is I've either not had to do it or I just have used my local shop. So I have not had to personally search for a venue, but I know Matt has.
Yeah, so typically we would try and support our local shop if they're big enough to hold our space, right? And then previously when Clash of Kings Australia started, we were running at Australia's biggest miniature gaming convention, CanCon. So that part of the benefit of that is that they would provide you all the tables and things like that, but part of the drawback, not the terrain, but the tables, part of the drawback was that there was time limitations on how many tickets you could access and things like that. And then COVID hit and people were a bit nervous about coming back to big conventions. So we happened to find another place that via one of the local gaming guys that just had a big open space. At that stage, they could provide the boards and, then we just had to do the rest. So I think with the gaming venue, it really depends. Probably the most important thing is what do you need on the day? So if it's going for a whole day, you need the space, you need good toilet facilities, particularly with gamers, and you're going to need, if you're not ordering in food for them all, which is, I think, can be controversial because not everyone likes the same stuff. You need somewhere that ideally is going to have good supply to options for them at a lunch break or even during the day. So we've been quite lucky with having on-site catering.
Did you mention air conditioning?
Yeah, air conditioning would be ideal. Yeah. yeah. Or a place that was the other thing about the con. It used to get like so hot. And we've got limited air conditioning where we are now, but it's nice tall ceilings. And when you've only got 60 people instead of 1,000 people in a building, it makes a big difference. So I think they would be the biggest considerations about like how do you want your event to run and those things. And where possible, I'd be looking to support a game store. Once you go off site, if you don't have someone that can provide the boards, and that's where you get into the issues around cost and things like that, I think, because, you then have to, if you're going to have to buy the boards, that pushes up the cost, which, you can account for maybe in your ticket price over time or take a hit, and if you're going to run it over multiple years, you eventually get it back. But then you have also the issue of storage. Ideally, the benefit of playing either at your gaming store or a place that regularly runs events means that they're likely to be able to do it across years for different events, and they'll have things like your boards and stuff like that. What would you say that? How's that go, Rob? Because when it's at the big ones in the States where you might use a hotel and everything, that's obviously a challenge. So people are bringing in the boards and things for that.
So we play on a 6x4, right? That's our table size. And so sometimes it's a challenge to get tables that are exactly the right size. And if you can hire them, or the venue can get, like the US Masters this year in Reno, they had exactly the right size tables, which was ace. But if you can't, you figure a way around. Like I've seen ones where if maybe it's not level, like from table to table, people will bring in like a sheet of corrugated and put it down, and then the mat on top of that. So the big thing is make sure you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, right? And know exactly how the tables are going to be set up, how they're going to be laid out in the room, and how you're going to deploy the table, how the mat's going to get on the table. Assuming you're going to play with mats, right? I mean, that's kind of the common thing is neoprene mats and terrain and stuff. If you don't have it the day of, it's too late at that point. You really have to, that's one of the very few things that there's no one you could call like, oh, we didn't bring XYZ. It's like, oh man, you are in trouble.
That goes into my one of my other questions, I guess, is what do you do for terrain? Does every table look the same?
You know what? That's how you make your tournament different. On one hand, some events go, look, you come to our event, it might look slightly the same, but every set of terrain for each table has the same number of pieces, and the pieces all have the same footprint. And you know what? Each round, we're all going to play with the same layout. So that's like from a competitive standpoint, there's no variability between the tables. So everybody has the same layout, and you can argue that's one less thing. It's even more about the player on the table. Other events, myself included, I don't do that. Every table is different, wildly different terrain. What I've started to do is the top tables, top 5, they're maybe a little bit more tournament focused. They really help with ease of play, making clean play, and they still look good, but like it's all about functionality there. And the farther down you get, like I have a table that nobody uses. It's like the last table. And I just tell anybody, hey guys, if you're out of the tournament and you just want a hell of a time, go play on this river table. It's obnoxious to play on, but some people just want to play on it. Like, a river that's 6 feet long and right down the middle. And there's these buildings and there's tons of woods, and it's a memorable thing. So to answer your question succinctly, depends on what type of tournament you're trying to run. And usually there's 2 options. One is you can build your own terrain, which is what I do, but I don't have an 80-man event, right? This is a 30, 40 player event at most. I have terrain for that. If you start getting bigger than that, a lot of times you'll have communities will come together and say, hey, like US Masters, right? We'll say, okay, I did that on the first one. I had, let's say we needed 32 tables for US Masters. I had 26, and then somebody else brought more, right? And so you might have multiple other tournament organizers bringing in terrain. I don't know, Matt, how do you guys do it like that, or how do you do it?
So in the past, we used to, over the years, so this is part of the thing of like, if you plan on doing it for years, you can just make it a work of progress, right? But now we've gradually accumulated. We now own 30 mats, 30 tables of terrain, actually more than that, which most of it, me and, Michael Clark might have printed it or put it together, and then the group painted it together. But when you are that big, I probably haven't been as strict on everything being like exactly the same height and profile. We've still got some stuff that I'm a bit unhappy with being a bit too small. So we gradually, work our way through replacing that. It comes down to, what's the type of terrain your community likes to play with too. But but we have moved over the years to basically going towards, while the sizes and shapes of things might differ a little bit, which I think is not a bad thing for some variability, we have moved to playing on the same table of terrain for everyone.
The layout.
The layout is the same each round, which I think, again, just comes down to what your personal preference is. By the same token, don't mind a bit of random, but at a bigger event, it's actually probably easier to organize that way, is that you have a set map each round rather than randomizing the tables or something. And then you just get the players to set up the next round at the end of their game or the game after. But I mean, and our terrain certainly isn't as beautiful as Rob's. But we've made an effort over the years to try and improve it. So, it's not themed. We've got 30 mats that are all grass-based. So the terrain doesn't always look like it should go on it. So there's sometimes you just have to make a bit of a sacrifice for practicality. But at a smaller event, if you're wanting to have theme, I really love the idea of theme tables. I'm certainly going to do that, particularly now that, I've got my printers humming and things. I think I will, over time, work towards having some, themed rounds. Again, if you've got competitive players going, the main thing that I would urge is, even if the tables aren't the same, that you would consider there has to be some genericness across the tables. So, if you're going to have, say, rounds that are fire theme, it's probably better to have, them all a bit fiery in some way. But just depends. Or you make sure that everyone plays on, something like that across the event.
So you can have your cake and eat it too now. So what I've started to do is, if you do head over to the Countercharge website, there's a downloads tab and there are terrain templates for MDF, cutting out MDF profiles. Cut those out. Everybody uses those, every table. But then on top of those, do what you want. You could have a purple, desolate, deserty landscape that might be reminiscent of Twilight Kin. You might have another one that looks like the inside of a big dwarven throng, a big dwarven hall. But functionally, they're all the same because they all have the same area size, right? And the piece is just really decoration. So that's what I've started to do the last little bit, and it's worked out pretty good. And I think I'll keep doing that. So now, the one thing we didn't talk about is, outside anybody, I'm doing terrain's amazing. It's a lot of fun. It's super cool. But, when the tournament's over, it's got to be stored somewhere. And my garage is a disaster because I just have tubs and tubs and tubs. So just know that, yes, it's great. That being said, I'm pretty sure the cat's not out of the bag. Mantic has terrain and mats now for Kings of War. They've got some injection molded hills. And so, yeah, if you don't really want to do the terrain yourself and you want maybe a quicker option, I don't know that it's necessarily cheaper, but a quicker option, you could buy it from them now.
How much does the game being run impact your event? So if you're doing Halo versus Dead Zone or Firefighter, Kings of War, like Ambush versus Champions, what are game-specific things you take into consideration running or planning, besides, hey, this is what we're playing in the packet?
Well, the first thing it'll affect is how many games you play in a day. Because it'll be like, what's the usual running time for a game? And then for games like Kings, it'll be then, the size is the next thing that affects how many games you play in a day. Otherwise, I think it primarily affects, mats, boards. Like for us, running smaller events are actually, or games that are played on smaller mats are more of an issue than normal Kings games now, because we've got all 6x4 stuff and things like that. So, scale of the game. So obviously, if we decided to then have an epic tournament now, you'd need all different terrain at an epic scale. So I think it would affect things like that. Halo, basically you can come all out of a box, but then you could also have terrain if you wanted on top of that. But I think probably it mostly affects your timing, and then what I guess equipment, for need of a better term, that you put around it.
Just at face value, I would never run an event that I didn't know the game system for and wasn't at least remotely experienced with it. The other thing is, like, what type of game is it? And what I mean by that is it like a tournament game where it's clean and it's designed to be played competitively? Or is it something like Champions where, you can play Champions maybe in a competitive setting, but some of the scenarios are so wonky that I think it's better played in the spirit of casual play. It's more of just like, hey, we're going to get together and play 3 games. So, I also think the competitive nature or the type of crowd that it will attract might change the event a little bit. I don't, like, if you're talking about Kings of War, like, are you playing with a chess clock or are you not?
Yeah, that's something we didn't raise at all. And so that's another thing you would need is if you're going to play with clocks, you got to provide the clocks.
You want to make sure they have them, right? So yeah, so luckily our shop has a whole bunch.
Most people do play with a clock.
The competitive scene definitely does.
Because didn't War Machine originally use clocks? Yeah, and so I think we've got quite a few Kings players that used to also play War Machine, so I think clocks weren't uncommon there either.
Yeah, I think Dan Kamek was a dirty War Machine player back in the day.
And then
he's dirty.
And then again, over time, we just accumulated our own. So, various, go onto eBay, find the cheapest clock that you can, and that most of it, honestly, they work fine for the cheapest clock. It's just, I generally try and buy only 1 or 2 maybe types if it's possible. And if you can do it that way, because they all just have their little vagaries with setting them up.
You could show somebody, right?
Yeah. So, you don't want, if you've got a 10-table event, you don't want 10 different types of clocks. And you don't really want people using digital options on their phone or, on their phone or iPad. Battery might die, and then if they forget their charger, and then it swings on and off. So the thing in terms of providing for me is, or also around what you state in the pack, it's all, the endpoint really is all geared at how am I minimizing the opportunity for conflict? Not that it's common in our game, but it's about you take away any potential points of conflict. And that includes actually the one thing we didn't touch on, Rob, was how you manage dice down. So in the new book, and in the old book, Mantic always have stated that. We probably do a little more generous version than that. But if you're going to run on a clock, how do you manage that? Like, what is the exact process that happens when someone's clock hits the end?
Yeah, and my recommendation is always, when you run on a clock, you just dice down and you're just done for the rest of the game. The other player can still go ahead and roll and play their turns, but you just don't participate in the game anymore. As opposed to when we first started, it basically said you auto lose. Right, if you run on a clock. Wow. So that really, it was a bad feel moment. So, in the spirit of 4th edition, where we are trying to get rid of some of the bad feels, we have been doing that since 2015.
Cool.
Yeah, they used to. I think the original 2nd edition book had you time out. And what did you say auto lose?
You lose. Yeah, you lose. That's it.
You lost.
Game's over.
And then the next version still didn't have auto lose, but you had to not make any moves, but you also lost tournament points or something. Yeah. I think most people play a more generous version now.
So we talked a little bit last time about some awards and prizes and scoring and stuff. So what are some of those soft scores that you've enjoyed seeing in events?
So at Kings of Memphis, it's got a music theme. So we have the King of Memphis, which is best overall. It is a score based on your on-table gaming score, your on-table sportsmanship score, and your hobby score. And they're not all weighted the same. It's mostly gaming, right? Then we call the Bad Mother. It is the best general. It's the person that treated everybody poorly all weekend by abusing them on the table. And that's just straight up how many points did you get on the table from the games. Then we have the Hound Dog, which is best sports. That is the vote of, and this does not have, and this is the player's choice, if you will, for best sport. This is the best sportsmanship award. And what's interesting is that score does not contribute to overall in any way. This is just for this award. Then we have a Boy Named Sue, which is the best painted or best hobby. And then we have the Rockiness Army, which is the player's favorite army that's out there. It's a player voted award. And then we have a favorite bard model because we have a special bard character. Everybody builds these cool looking bards. So we pick, the community or the participants pick their favorite. We have the creative composer, which is the community picks. I keep saying community. The participants pick the favorite list, right? Like which list do they think is the coolest? And nothing to do with models, just what's the coolest list. And then we have obviously the countercharger, which is where, perfectly mediocre, right in the middle. And then we have the one hit wonder, which is the last place award. So it's interesting. Like how I would value these awards if I was to win them is probably much different than Matt. But in general, King of Memphis, the best overall, is probably going to be the most coveted award. And then any of the like best sports or best painted would be up there as well. And then the rest of them are just nice to have. But everybody that comes to your event is probably thinking about, well, I'm more of a hobby gamer, or I'm more of a, I just want to have fun at the table, kind of more sporting thing. Or I'm there, as like an Andy Patton would say, I'm there to win the tournament, right? I'm there to crush face. So I don't know, Matt, what are your thoughts on awards?
Sorry, was in another screen and then was muted. So I think awards are probably awards are a good way of giving people to play for different things. So you might have people that just love their hobby, and but terrible gamers, and so it gives them something to play for. So I think having variety of awards is a really good thing. And did you allude to scores as well, Zach? Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. What do you take into consideration when you're judging paint? What sounds like you're handing out papers where you say, "Oh, I liked this person's army," or "I liked this person's sportsmanship," or stuff like that.
The Australian scene's a bit different to the US. Is the US they incorporate a lot more hobby in than tournaments, but consistently now there has been a bit of a move in Australia towards some hobby, and certainly with Clash, the idea of our hobby scores is more rather than inclusion and basically trying to set a minimum standard. So like you could state that you have a minimum standard of hobby, but then you've got to be prepared to turn someone away if they don't. And I don't think that's necessarily right. I think the best way is to encourage people to make the effort to get their army ready. So generally we have, I think it's a 5 category where each is worth about 6 points, and it's about, does the base look full? So we did away with the MMC, PMC thing, which is minimum model count or preferred model count. Does the base look full so you don't get, the cheapskate putting 3 horses on a regiment of cavalry and it just looks empty? Does it actually represent what it meant to? So, if it flies, does it look like it flies? And then basic things like that. So that's a bit different to how a lot of tournaments in the States do it. Clash is also different. The most controversial bit of our hobby scores is bonus points for using some or all of Mantic armies. It's something that I debate every year in my head. But we've always been something that's meant to promote Mantic a lot more. So I've left it in for years, just as a bit of encouragement. Toned it down a little bit from what I had last year, particularly with an edition change. And we just have a bit of a sliding scale. So, you get some points if you just put one thing somewhere in your army that it's at least Mantic derived. It can even be part of a multi-base. And then I think there's at the middle is 50% Mantic. And then even then we try and make it easy by going on the percentages derived on units or models, so you could have a couple of high model count things that you do all Mantic models and it'll drive you a fair way to getting to that percentage already. So we still try to not make it too exclusive. Before recent years, there was an argument that it really, changes what people will bring. But at the same time, if the pack's out early, so be it. All tournament packs change what someone brings to your event. So you decide what you want your event to look like, and that's what you create awards and scores around.
Yeah. In terms of the hobby score, you're typically going to see a rubric where it's like a checklist of, and whether that's players self-judged or like an actual paint judge, but there, there'll be basic questions, right? Like, pull it up here. Is the army fully prepared and completed by the player, right? Like, did you paint it yourself? Did you paint all the details? Those kind of things. And I will say there's a distinction between a paint score, which is just how the army's painted, and like maybe a hobby score where like at Kings of Memphis, we do painting, modeling, and theme. You actually get points for making interesting choices to your army list by bringing units that maybe don't see the table very often. So you'll have a rubric, and that's important because they know going in roughly what their army should score, right? There's not as much subjectivity if you have a rubric. Now, there are some events that don't use a rubric, and it's mostly just like there's one judge that goes around and makes a decision, and those are a little harder. I mean, I'll be honest, Ryan Smith at Alamo and Cheat, he does that, but it's still an amazing time because he will spend hours and hours combing over it. And what's really great is if you want to know why you got the score you got, well, if you have 2 hours, he will explain it in very detail. In terms of sportsmanship, there's really 2 components to it. There is, and I'm speaking from American perspective, there is the what was your behavior at the table? And for those, we have very objective questions like, was your opponent on time? Do they have everything ready to play the game? You know, those kind of questions. Very yes or no. Then there's favorite opponent or best sportsman, you know, of the event. And that can be rolled into overall, but that's more of just I don't want to call it is sort of a popularity contest, but it is, you know, depending on how you do it, you're basically asking the players to score, to rank, to pick their favorite opponents of the 5 or 6 that they may have played over the weekend. And so for us, we have chosen not to do that as part of overall. That's just a separate award. And the objective piece, the points that get generated about your behavior at the table, that is part of your overall.
That's really nice. I like how you guys have put a lot of thought into making things as fair and balanced and welcoming as possible.
Yeah, the other thing that I think you can consider with points is incentivize the things that make your life and the opponent's life easier. So, you know, with points, incentivize having the list submitted on time, because there's nothing more annoying as a TO than chasing people for their lists, you know. And I used to kind of go along the path of, with a day out, I'd look through the list and I'd have it checked off and see who I can, and I'd be chasing people. Now I'm just like, nah, you know, if you can't do it, you can lose the points, particularly at a big tournament. And the other thing I do with that is incentivize making sure people have printed copies of their lists for their opponent, and that's about the gameplay experience for the opponent. So like someone hasn't just got their list on their phone and only they can see it or have to pass their phone over. You know, I think that's where printed lists are still really important. So I incentivize that with points.
Going back to Matt, what you were talking about appearance too, like do you let proxies in and those kind of things? We've always had, and by the way, super glad MMC, PMC, not a thing in 4th edition, right? Not a thing. We've always said it's the rule of cool, but for my event, I've changed it. I basically say if it's cool and not confusing to your opponent, then do it. If it's not, do something else. That's my rule for what army you should be bringing to Kings of Memphis.
So, and my last question is going to be a bit of a hard one. How do you budget and price an event?
That's a tough one. It depends on your circumstance. So I'm a little bit of an anomaly in that, to be fair, Mike, who runs our War Room Hobbies, pretty much underwrites the whole event. I mean, I think we charge $70, I think. But we feed you, right? And
that's for 2 days, correct, Rob?
Yeah, it's 2 lunches, yep. Right? And it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He's basically shutting the store down for us. Oh, and by the way, every player last year got a Kings of War box of some kind. So that's, you know, yeah, he's super generous. So I am completely the wrong person to answer this question because I just rely on my benefactor to make sure I'm able to put this on. But Matt, you have to financially plan this thing. You're trying to sustain this thing year over year, and it needs to not make a profit, but you don't want to be losing so much money that it doesn't make sense.
I would have lost a lot of money over time, but by choice, you know, Rob likes to joke that I'm the money bags. So I my company financially underwrites it instead. So again, that's probably a little bit different to most, and people might not be prepared to, but that's okay. And you just do that. I mean, so this is another thing you can make clear in your pack. Your toughest time will be your first or second one where you don't know how many people you're going to get, and pretty much knowing your costs first up. And so we had one this year that we ran late notice, and I basically said in the pack, we're going to put basically it's going to be this much. That's pretty much going to take that's the cost of running the event, and if we get a certain amount of people where we get excess, then we'll buy prize support. So, we budgeted it for basically no prize support. And then if you get more people, that there's more. I think in the end, we do, and I still do put out when we've got prize support and a lot of prize support, but I think people aren't coming from it. We've frequently had over the years people go, they come for a trophy or they come for the games more than anything, but they don't care so much about getting boxes of models. Like I could count on one hand our players, the amount of players that actually, care about how much they receive back from the tournament. But I do understand it's a vibe. So what I would do for budgeting is there any room hire? Right, that's your first one. What else do you have to put on? Where if it's like Rob, where there's food, that has to come into account. So $70 US would be about 110 or something Australian at the moment. We run a 2-day event for $70, but we have a pretty decent room hire arrangement. The tables are provided for us. People buy their own food from the shop that's there. And then some of that will go into printing supplies for me for printing stuff. But, most of the time I just cover that. And then we allocate whatever else to any other running costs. So I think if you have a good idea of what the running costs will do, and that gives you, and if you have a bit of an idea of what's the absolute minimum number of people that you expect, you can kind of set that as your bar, but you can declare to people, what may or may not be available in terms of prize support.
I would also recommend if you're just starting out, don't worry about prize support. Just make it as cheap as possible, right? If you're having to spend extra money to buy prize support, well, you're just going to make, it's all going to go back eventually to the player to pay for that. So my personal opinion is people don't come to an event because of prize support. If it's there, great, but I think if you do want to give them something like a widget. So we did have prize support, but this year we have 3 Bard characters, and we printed up nice gaming cards for the 3 Bards. So they're playing with them. They don't have to write the rules down. They can just say, this is the card. This is the guy that I'm playing with. You have all these stats there. You could give them widgets. You could give them tokens. You could give them, disordered, or, well, I guess disorder is not a thing anymore, but, you could give them wavering, right? Even, I guess we'll need less wavering tokens now, but you can give them something. Or in the past, we've done just like a ruler, like an Arcosite ruler that's 9 inches that let us do, okay, that's very inspiring. And it had measurements so you could see the unit leader point on the unit, and it had an angle to do line of sight. So, I think it's just like when you're buying somebody a present, I think the person's always going to appreciate it when you thought about them more. Same thing here. Like if you've taken the time to think about the game and you're giving them something that they have real use for in the game going forward, and it's a memento of the event.
Well, one thing that I've increasingly disliked over the years too is people having expectations. And so by people, I mean tournament organisers having expectations that they'll get something for free, right? I think budget on what you can provide. Like Mantic's a smallish company. I don't think small tournaments should be asking for a lot. Like I personally believe Mantic should reserve their support, like unless they do discount vouchers or something, but like actual prize support for larger, more prominent events. So then what I often do is I lean on a local supplier and say, look, if we give you a shout out, can we get, heavily discounted? I'll buy the stock, but like, what's the best rate you can give me? And we'll buy it. And then if you're playing at the game store, I'll do a little bit of that. But then I'll also, if I've got leftover, I'll say, can we also do some gift vouchers that I'll give you the money for so that you're getting full freight of whatever someone uses it for? I think it's important to ask for a little bit, but a reasonable amount maybe from your store or something. But how are you going to scratch their back? Like, how are you going to become the tournament that they want to support in the future? Because it shouldn't be all about the store giving to you or Mantic giving to you or everything. I really think, particularly with stores, it's about how do we give to the store and how do we become a preferred gaming system for the store?
Don't go in expecting a lot of people to respond back and go, yeah, we have plenty of stuff for you. First of all, you'll be lucky if they even respond. Second of all, when they do respond, they're probably going to say, hey, we don't do that anymore, or we did, or we've already used up our budget. I've stopped doing it. Honestly, I don't even bother. I just, it's just not part of our event. If Mike feels like he wants to do it, he'll do it. Or if Mantic does, that's fine. But typically, I'll say it like this. Nobody's coming to Kings of Memphis to win a box of Empire of Dust Spearmen, right? Like, that's not a thing. They're coming because we have a cool atmosphere, nice tables.
Sexy TO.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, for sure. I will say, one other thing we didn't mention earlier, the bigger the event, and even like a 12-person event, 18%, yes, you can run it. It is so amazing to have help. One person can be the scorekeeper. One person can handle paint judging. And one person can just handle all the other crap. Oh, here's the caterer. I'll get the table set up and put the barbecue out. I'll get the prize support lined up. You know what I mean? Like having extra hands. Oh, how about a spare player? So this last year I played. It is super difficult to run an event and play at the same time when you're trying to. Now, I have the luxury of Andy was the scorekeeper, so that did help. But man, it would have been so much better to have a spare player, right? So, and we should have mentioned that, Matt, that you really, really, really need to find a very good friend that's not going to pay anything, but they're just going to be there with an army. And if you have an odd number, they're going to play. If it's not, they're going to stand around. They're going to help you paint judge or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, or if it's small enough, like if you're an experienced TO, I'm kind of quite comfortable if it's 20 or under. I reckon having done a lot now, I could play and run if I had to, but I wouldn't typically. And I think you should always, I'm a big believer of, you certainly shouldn't play as, this is a personal opinion, but you shouldn't play as a TO.
And also the bias.
Yeah, 100%. So that's all stuff that has to be declared. There's bias. How do you handle conflicts, things like that. So there can be uncomfortable situations, but I certainly don't think you should play if it creates an uneven number. When we said, tournaments being a TO is about giving to your community. That's the way I foresee it first. And if it creates, because I don't believe, particularly if people travel to your event, that they should have to sit out for a buy. That's
100%.
something. Yeah.
That's a terrible idea. Also, let's just talk about, regardless if it's the TO or somebody else, let's talk about ringer armies. If it's like a spare player that's a friend, sure, bring an army and compete, right? And you just made the numbers the same. But if it's sort of an afterthought, I think there's something to be said with having a spare army there that's meant to play at the bottom tables and give the player that may not be having the greatest weekend at least one awesome game where you're engaged. And, a lot of times it's a newer player. And, I find I'm just there to teach them. Maybe I'm help them learn the game further and show them, and so those are the games where I'm like, by the way, here's the army. Here's all the things it does. And in every situation, I'm saying, don't forget I have wild charge. You should be, if you're hosting a party, you should be able to afford to pay for the punch and pie. Same thing. You should be the life of the party. You're there to make them have a good time. You're not there to have a good time and win and smash face. So I'm going to call out my very good friend, Blake Schroed, runs the Michigan DT. He rocks up with, 5 units of defense, 6 abyssal golems as the ringer army. He's playing the dude at the bottom table. Poor Mr. Daniel Bryan, who lives across the street from my mom. And I'm like, why did you think that was okay? He goes, well, I wanted to give him a good game. So giving him a defense 6 wall that he can't tap and he can't do anything is a good game. Anyways, I am just busting his balls, but it is a valid point that I typically am going to build maybe a more interesting list than just like the stocks. Like if I'm playing ogres, I'm not going to have 5 hordes of Siegebreakers. I'm going to play with some more interesting things that maybe they haven't seen before on the table to give them a better experience. Because it's about their enjoyment, not mine.
Yeah, which equally could just also come down to, like, if that was the only army you had, say, which I know it's not, but like if it was, it's like the other thing you said there, Rob, is basically how you play it, right? So, giving them a good game in that regard. So, yeah, all of my tournaments, I always allocate the buy to the person coming last, and we try and give them a good game. And, it doesn't mean that you roll over for them, but you're going to, hopefully give them a nice, good game, help them learn a little bit. And I don't tend to have the buy floating through the tournament.
I also don't make an army that's weak. I mean, I have the tools to play the game. So when I go to the table, I'm going to ask the person, like, what do you want from this game? And I've had players that go, Rob, I know I'm at the bottom, but I want to get better. So don't pull your punches. And so I don't. I play them a legitimate game, but I don't assume that that's what they're looking for. I do try to ask them what their expectations are for the game. I've had a good friend of mine that played Riftforged Orcs. It was like, hey, let's play a good game, but I'm really here to learn and learn my army a little bit better, and maybe learn a little bit about goblins. So that's, we did the dance, and it was a great game. So
yeah, which is a good reason not to have that ball ache list, I guess. Have a nice balanced list that then gives you the opportunity that if the person wants it to, that you can go full ham in your gameplay, but it's not the list doing the hard work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have a few of the tools if you need to use them, but the whole army isn't like, oh, I'm going to bring all abyssal golems. Okay, that's fun.
That pretty much wraps up all my questions. Like, I fully expect, this like mini series that I've been on with you guys, these 2 episodes at least, is kind of what I'm hoping to be a time capsule that I can go back and look on, someday when I can actually be a Pathfinder and afford to run an event, and look back and say, okay, these are the things I need. And things will change as the edition changes and stuff like that, I'm sure. But having these ideas out there for the people to look back on was really the point of it, and for myself too. Because I do fully expect to not break even when we eventually run an event or things like that. But I do recognize, like you said, there's a lot that goes into that background, a lot that you guys take care of, and it comes out of your own pockets or a company's pocket. And so it's fair commerce at some level, but I want that to be absolutely in the player's favor. Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, you want them to come to the event because the event is awesome.
Yeah.
There are the areas to not commit to. Like, if someone's wanting to run a first event, I do not believe that it necessarily, but if you've got a local gaming community already, I do not believe that there should be any reason it has to be run at a loss, right? But it might just be a little bit more bare bones event, and depends on how many people you get there. You just don't do things like prize support the first time, but you declare that's how it's going to be. Because it'll often be the committing to things like too much prize support, particularly after buy it, that are going to push you over the edge. But if you've got a community that can provide the terrain and things like that, you really should be able to do it at reasonably low cost. Your main expense after that is going to be basically like if there's any venue hire or food or something.
Or rental fees is what we would call it, not hire. This English guy over here.
Well, and another thing I just thought of, like, so you want to leave yourself room to grow. So have a low barrier to entry and a low bar your first time. And then as things progress, as your community grows, then you get fancier as you go, kind of a thing. Am I off base with that?
No, you're right. And if you really want to grow into a really big thing, you're going to need to grow your mat collection and your terrain collection. So actually plan a little profit, which is then going to be sunk into next year's event, right? So you want it to be sustainable. So this year, you make a little bit of extra scratch, you put that aside, and you invest it in next year. And then next year makes a little, and so you build up the event organically. It's a lot less difficult, a lot less impact on your own personal finances and your own pocketbook, right?
Yeah, and I would actually advocate for extending that not just to finance, but to give yourself less things to worry about. Play it out of the book. The first event, don't worry about special characters or special terrain or any of these other things that you can tweak with. I agree, like, not everyone likes them anyway, but I agree that in general that they do change things up a bit. But if you're like worried about running your first one, just go from the book. Maybe the scoring system's the only thing that you decide on, but you pretty much play everything else out of the book.
And if you don't have enough terrain, gamify it. So the Forge GT, run by my good friend Nathan Clevenger, he has like a table builder award, right? And you bring a table and you get judged. You get judged on that table and you might win a prize. But what it does is it incentivizes basically the whole community.
That's a great idea.
He doesn't have to bring all the tables, right? So, yeah. We're kind of at the end, but I did want to take a moment to just maybe ask you a couple questions. Obviously, you're newer to Kings of War. You've seen 4th edition kind of coming on the horizon. How would you summarize what you've seen in terms of the preview and what life's like been going through this edition?
I feel like 4th edition is made for me. Like, thank you, Ronnie. I mean, coming from Firefight, the army composition makes way more sense than Thirds does for me. I have great feelings about command dice and Firefight. How the command dice came into 3rd edition, I was a little iffy on. The 4th edition sounds really nice. I like how things sound more simple and very new player friendly, which again, that's for me. For nobody else, is it? Right? No, that's what it feels like. I feel like it's been. I feel like it's a very opportune time to get into Kings of War personally, and I'm really looking forward to jumping on that train in the community and seeing what we can do there. If I can work around the whole grad school schedule and whatnot, but bridges as they come.
That's right.
So. It's been really good looking at it. I like how they're doing shooting. I love Alessio and all of his principles that go into, we want this to feel thematic. We want this to feel realistic. We want it to feel like you can see these armies fighting on the table. I don't like spam. I don't like, in Warhammer, they had the era of the Triptide. You took 3 Riptide war suits and they annihilated everything. Or the Eldari spam or whatever. I'm getting this stuff secondhand, but having more of a balanced army, more of that. This is my war leader. These are his core battalions. These are the specialists. This is support. I love that.
How have you found the online discourse, Zach? So there's been a couple of posts on Fanatics recently about people saying, some of the discourse they know has turned newer players off. Are you present socially much online, or like has there been how have you perceived the online discourse around 4th?
I would say I do try to stay pretty present on social media. It's usually to compliment people's paint jobs, if I'm honest. But Drek, I'm talking to you. I think I know it has been mixed. There was, like, around the time 4th was officially announced and a lot of the things started to come out of the woodworks, that I was taking a bit of a break from social media for personal reasons. But coming back to it, I do see some of those mixed ideas about it. And I understand if you are used to a game that change can be scary. So I saw... Let's draw an analogy. I saw Dungeons and Dragons. I came in 5th edition, at the beginning of 5th edition, kind of. And Dungeons and Dragons did a lot of what you guys have talked about 3rd edition doing, where it was Band-Aid on Band-Aid. They would come out with new books, and they would try to fix classes, and they would try to make these tweaks to the game that eventually made things really muddled. And then they came out with not 6th edition, but D&D 2024. The big difference is that the company, Hasbro, running D&D, had made a lot of bad decisions as a company that their players were upset by. Mantic, I don't think Mantic has done a bad player faith decision since I've met them, or even in their history, from what I've seen. And so I think that people need to look at that with a lot of generosity and patience and play it and learn. I mean, that sounds really forceful, but I think it's worth playing and figuring out and giving it a chance before you come out and say, no, this is dumb. I don't like this, whatever. Having preconceived notions, yeah, that's fine. Having preconceived notions.
Mantic's track record has earned them the right for us to assume positive intent.
Exactly. Whereas recent things with Hasbro and how they've been treating Wizards of the Coast and how they've forced them to do things, that's a whole can of worms we don't need to get into. But the new edition of D&D is facing such a player drop off. People have gone to Pathfinder, myself included. People are looking at Daggerheart, which looks awesome. Probably going to get into that. People have been going everywhere but, and you see a little bit of that with GW too. Not to get super into company politics and whatever, but I do think that Mantic's team, it was sad to see the rules committee go away, but I do trust Alessio and the play testing community that they're setting up seems to be very similar and to play the same role. So that's also very exciting. So I think things are looking up for 4th edition. And I always say, give compliments where compliments are due. And I think some people might find that annoying or accuse me of glazing, but I honestly think, put positivity out, get positivity in type of a deal.
I think that's, Matt and I would probably agree. We probably, when it came out that the RC was being disbanded, that would have been a good time for us just to comment on the fact that this is not new, guys. They've done this 4 or 5 times where they've dumped, completely reset the thing. I think the one difference here is that they have a new focus going in, and I don't really care what they call it. It's still going to be a rules committee, right? They're going to be play testing stuff. They're going to be balancing lists and play testing lists just like before. I think the difference is they're giving the keys to the rules to Alessio, which is a great thing. So, and I think it's going to take a big burden off of the new committee. So, but yeah, we didn't do a very good job of communicating that, guys. You're hearing this, but that doesn't really mean what you think it means.
Alessio / Matt, and I think, some of those Band-Aids we had before, Zach, are because Rules Committee were being given too much to do. So I think this new era represents Mantic taking more ownership of the game, which I think, maybe that won't end up quite the game that some people like or have learned, but I think it's a better thing for the company to be going, you know what, this is our game. We have to be the ones that make the final decisions.
Well, there's an argument to be made too that we don't want to end up like you would say, like with the 9th Age. And I've said this all along. If you have a situation where people making the decision on where the game is going is part of your community, that ends up with hurt feelings because, oh, this army just got good because XYZ, that's their army they play, right? It is much better. Take GW, for example. It's much better if you're playing 40K to go, you know what? GW did this to my army, not my friend across the table, right? So right. I like that too, that, the fact that Matt's stepping up to kind of run the lists, or Matt's stepping up to develop lists, and then we got Alessio with the rules, that Mantic is taking a personal, serious ownership of these things. And it just, I don't know, it's a positive thing to me.
I think so too. I hope I answered your question.
You did. And now Matt, we should have some fun. So, Zach is a perfectly educated player. So we have some terms and we'll hit you with 10. Matt will keep score and we'll just see how good you are.
Let's go.
You ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
What is MSU?
MSU?
MSU.
Do I get lifelines?
Nope.
He's using ChatGPT in the background.
MSU. In Kings of War, right?
Well, I'll give you a hint. The U stands for unit.
Okay. Unit. Let's see.
And the S stands for small.
Okay. Mantic small unit, huh? Moderately small unit. No, I don't know.
Multiple small units. So an acronym for to represent a style of gameplay, I guess, for people that like to put, lots of small units instead of hordes or things down.
Oh, okay. So horde gameplay, a horde is an actual block of units. Like that is a unit, is a horde in Kings of War.
Well, yeah, it's the largest version of an infantry unit now
Right.
in 4th. It used to be the largest version of a lot more units, but in 4th, horde will only represent basically the largest version of an infantry unit. Well, if you exclude legions.
Right, yeah. And basically when you have an MSU, you mostly have small troops and regiments, right? It's more about getting more units on the table rather than big heavier units. All right. Well, so you're 0 for 1. Matt, are you keeping score?
I'm keeping score.
Let's do another one. So this is one of my favorites. The term is anything but. And people will say that, well, what do I need? Anything but. What does that mean? Anything but.
Like the term anything but?
Wait, let's give him a hint. It's in regard to dice rolling.
Correct. So there'll be a certain dice roll that happens in every game after range and after ranged combat. The ranged phase, or I guess now is that they're called the shooting phase. I don't know. Or in combats, you have to do a roll, and the person will say anything but.
Okay, is that like anything but the roll that will get this? Like if there's one single roll, like a boxcars or a snake eyes that will get this model removed. Anything but that.
We're gonna give him credit, Matt.
Yeah.
Yes, it means anything but double ones is what it means. So if you need anything but, that means you just don't roll double ones, and you got my unit. Matt, what's the score? 1 and 1?
1, 1, 1. 1, 1. Sorry, 1, 1. Too many ones. Just 1, 1, 1.
No.
You can't draw an answer.
Talking in binary.
All right. The next one. Caterpillar Potion.
No, Caterpillar Potion's not something that's in Kings of War right now, right? It was a thing before that gave things Pathfinder.
Yeah. So, what do you know what the actual name of it was?
The actual name of the Caterpillar Potion?
There's actually a name.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Yeah. That's what we call it, right? So. I believe, Matt, I'm going to give it to him because I don't think he's going to get it. Makwar's Potion of the Caterpillar, I believe is the technical term.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I never would have gotten that.
It's been out for a while, though. So
what did you call it?
Makwar. It's a person that came up with it, and that must have been his handle. So if you're really good at this game, Zakama 13, we may have a Zakama 13 magical artifact in your feature.
Okay, so Makwar was... How do you spell that?
I think it's Macwar. Is that right?
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Don't quote me.
MACCWAR.
Okay, so it just sounded
close.
like a certain Marauder.
I think it was.
Warpath.
All right. How about Tar Pit?
Tar Pit. Okay. We're not talking about terrain. We're talking about a unit called Tar Pit, right?
Yep.
Yes. So like a Tar Pit would be an area of really maybe slow moving, but big health or big defense that's going to block up an area. And if anything tries to attack it, it's going to be stuck in combat for a while.
What do you think, Matt? I think that's pretty close.
Yeah.
So that's 2 and 2.
2 and 2? Did you not give him Makwars? That's 3 and 1.
Okay.
No, I didn't get the name of it. I just said what it did.
Hey, Matt. We'll let the Australian. So Australians are always more charitable. So let's let the Australian judge.
Yep.
All right. I got one. Thick Chaff.
Okay, so thick chaff. So chaff is a unit that's like more expendable. You don't expect it to get a lot done. Thick chaff is going to be that high HP. It's going to take a lot of hits, and keep somebody busy for a while.
Yeah,
you think?
I'll take that.
Yep. So that's 4 and 1. He's killing it. All right, let's give him a one that's a little bit harder. Let's say ASB. ASB.
That is a harder one. I don't know if I've heard that one before.
So the first word is for A is Army.
Okay.
SB. Army SB.
Army style of battle?
Closer. Matt, you want to give him a hint?
Army standard
bearer.
I'm not giving it to you anyway. Too many hints. That's a loss for you. Yeah.
Fair.
I started saying it before Rob finished his sentence to hint. I thought he was going to say, "Do you?" I just want to give it to him. So I would have given a lesser hint.
All right. I got 2 words, and you got to tell me what they are. Concealed, obscured. It's Matt's favorite.
I know what the individual words mean. So concealed and obscured, it means covered or hidden. So something that's behind terrain or some other effect that doesn't let you get hit or targeted.
Mr. Crozier, what do you think?
Yeah, I give that. They were how they split cover, which the full answer is how they split cover in a way that Rob Fanoff thought was going to be a good idea, and I did not. And I was
thought that
right.
was a good idea.
I was right. It ended up one of the most hated changes at the end of third edition.
So what is he? Is he 5-2 right now? What's the score here?
5-2.
So we got 3 more to stump him.
All right.
3 more. How about J Boots?
Jesse's boots of flying.
Close.
Jesse's flying boots.
Oh no, he's only got half right.
Oh no,
it's the flying that's incorrect, Zach. If you can redeem yourself, we'll give you 6.
It's the flying that's incorrect.
Think about the S on J Boots.
That is the worst hint, I swear.
Jesse's snake leather boots.
No. Jesse's boots of striding.
Striding. Oh yeah.
So what is that? Is that 5-3 now? He's creeping up to his losses.
5-3.
Oh my gosh! All right, here's a gimme.
So wait. They let you go through terrain without getting hindered charges, right?
Or Pathfinder on the turn.
You get Pathfinder and Strider for 1 turn.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and Strider allows you to charge unhindered. Pathfinder allows you to still move at the double through difficult terrain.
So technically, what Matt should have said was Pathfinder lets you charge through difficult terrain. And at the double through difficult terrain. But that's all gone. All you can do now with Pathfinder in 4th edition is at the double through terrain. So here we go. Corkscrew.
Okay, so I've actually had a lot of questions about this one. So from what I understand, Corkscrew is where you have a bunch of units on the table and you have one charge that makes somebody move into a different charge next to them, which makes somebody move into a different charge next to them, and so on. How close am
I? Not that close. This is probably this is a good illustration of why it shouldn't exist. Yeah. So basically, a corkscrew charge was that a nimble square character, well, mostly nimble square characters, not only nimble square characters, could pretty much do double pivots to charge out of a combat to something else behind. So if you had, say, let's just say you had a large infantry hero engaged in a regiment in front of you, and then there was, if from where you're looking, there was another regiment to the back right of that first regiment that, because the large infantry is taller, it can see. Like a corkscrew charge would have allowed him, because he had 2 pivots, to pivot one way and charge from one combat into another combat.
So basically, pivot right, move down past the unit, and pivot back straight to go and hit. And sometimes what makes corkscrews even worse is a lot of times
it was the flank.
It was a flank, yeah. And so then and the withdraw rule, right,
made that
allowed
easier.
Units that were like large infantry, which is 120 by 80, the ability to get a free inch, which actually allowed them to get corkscrew charges too, which is why they then said, if you withdraw, you're -1, 2 fresh charges. But now it's not a thing. Corkscrew charges don't exist.
Oh, good, because I really didn't follow much of that.
No, it needs a visual. It needs a visual.
If you're engaged, you stay engaged unless you withdraw. That's it.
I'm trying to be engaged, I promise.
Yeah. So what are we on? Is that 5 and what are we at, Matt?
5 and 4, I think, is where we ended up.
Oh my gosh.
It's getting close. I'm failing this test.
Yeah, it's gonna be close. Is he gonna get it back to 50-50?
Someone will comment later and say I lost count, but sure,
Oh, that's always possible. It's always possible. Matt, do you have one you want to ask?
Weren't you just pulling these from the question of the repository? Yeah. So what, you're reading them out and you want me to make one up?
No, or just read one out. If you think it's...
What's boxcars? Nice, easy one to finish.
Double 6s.
There you go. He finishes at 6 and 4.
Yay.
Does 60% pass the class?
No.
Yeah.
That's a D in most schools, right?
Probably.
D's not an F.
Oh, true. You're not failing. You're just not very good.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to have you on and talk about these topics where you bring a different perspective tonight about tournament organization. And to be fair, I am certainly not an expert. Matt's much more an expert than me. And, maybe that'd be fun to, Matt, we bring on some other TOs in the future to maybe tackle some of these topics that we explored tonight. I think Corey Reynolds, the amazing master hand of the biggest event in the U.S. would be great. The Crossroads GT, or Mark Cox.
I was going to say world's biggest.
But you remind me, world's biggest. We should probably have Steve on. To be fair, if we bring Steve on, his co-contributors are going to be very upset because he steals all the spotlight every time he comes on.
Yeah. And Jeremy did do a good breakdown episode after the last clash with Steve.
Well, Zach, we appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate being here. Thanks so much. It's a lot of fun every time.
Thanks for listening. And until next time, halt! !
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.